can't really outsource your bench press in competition, right? You have to get under the bar. But that's the great thing in business, and that's why business you can move so much faster, is because you can just go find the expert in it that can help you. But you have to know what the weakness is to be able to do that, and that's what most people don't have the awareness, and so they end up, thinking they need something, going and paying someone and getting kind of screwed over.
Bringing you the biggest names and brightest minds in fitness, to give you behind-the-scenes access and how they created some of the most profitable and sustainable businesses the industry's ever seen. Having deep conversations about the shit that most fitness entrepreneurs don't want to talk about but have to in order to create a business that'll thrive for years to come. Dropping the knowledge and tools necessary to help you follow in their footsteps and create an empire of your own. I'm Sebastiano Mangiafico. This is FitBiz Talk. What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 7, and on today's show, we have AJ Roberts. Now, AJ was a powerlifter out of the infamous Westside Barbell Gym, where he set a number of world records. He's also the original host of the Barbell Business podcast. AJ is one of the most sought-after speakers in the fitness business space, and he goes to a number of events throughout the year speaking to business owners about how to create something that is sustainable and long-lasting. He also serves as the Chief Revenue Officer for Genesis Digital, the creators of Webinar Jam and Kartra, and I can't speak more highly enough about these products. I've personally used them and think they're a great asset to those people in the fitness industry who want to create online content. So here's AJ Roberts, and enjoy the show. AJ Roberts, what's going on? How are you doing today?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Doing well. So just kind of jumping right in here. One of the first things I want to talk about is your progression. I mean, you're well known as an elite powerlifter, multiple world records, and your career has somewhat transcended into being a very well-known consultant and speaker in the fitness business space, and also an executive now on, a software company. So can you talk a little bit about your transition over time and how it's led you to be in such a great opportunity and great role that you're in now?
Yeah. It's funny. I started out living in England and just wanting to play basketball, coming over to the States and a spanner being thrown in the works, so to speak, when I couldn't play my senior year, which kind of led me to competing in powerlifting. And ever since I was a kid, I'm a very obsessive person. And I have no problem with delayed gratification. So when I set my mind to something and commit to that, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, you're going to see me go all in and go after that goal. And so, when I got into the lifting in college, I started training with Brent Meitzel, who's a world record holder at the time, and knew I wanted to do that. And that led me on, a decade of, chasing that goal and eventually achieving what I wanted to achieve. And the business side of it kind of happened because, I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I got offered the role at University of Idaho D1 school as a track and field strength and conditioning coach, and they offered me $13,000 for the year. And I thought, how am I going to live on that? Eric Cressy and Mike Robertson were a couple of powerlifters I knew, but also amazing strength and conditioning coaches that had released a DVD and had online courses and stuff like that. And I reached out to Eric and said, hey man, how are you making a living doing this? And that led me into the world of marketing and internet marketing. Before I knew it, I was, out in Boston on Eric's couch. We drove to a Ryan Lee event, one of the original Ryan Lee boot camps. I just remember being there and realizing that, my future was being on stage and sharing information. I just knew I had something of value to be able to share. But ultimately, it opened my eyes to a whole different side of the industry. In terms of, online marketing and selling stuff, courses, products, DVDs, certifications, all these different things. And I'm, like I said, I get obsessed about stuff. And so as soon as I started realizing where people were learning stuff from, I invested in every course, every book, everything I could get my hands on, and kind of just in a roundabout way found myself wanting to get closer to Westside and train at Westside Barbell. Found myself taking a job out in Owensboro, Kentucky, which is about 4.5 hours away from Westside, running a health club. And the owners of the health club also had a consulting company for gyms. And so through strange, their webmaster was slacking, not getting their stuff online quick enough. And he was the owner was complaining about that one day while he was at the gym. And I said, yeah, I know how to add files online. I'd learned it. I took a internet 101 class in college. And so how much are you going to pay me? And they agreed to pay me $500 a month to upload files to the internet. And soon and later, I was giving them advice on, hey, we should try this. And they saw that I had a passion for that kind of stuff and kind of put me in charge of marketing. And I quickly stepped back from running the health club and ran the marketing for them, which allowed me then to move to Westside and train there full time, while being the marketing officer essentially for their consulting company. And then they went through a transition and moved into franchising, and I decided that that wasn't something I couldn't see myself doing that. There was a myriad of reasons, but one of the big things was my ego, and decided I wanted to go get the whole pie versus a piece of the pie. So I started launching other fitness professionals and things like that. And that led me into, expanding outside of our industry, meeting people in different spaces and whatnot, which, built relationships. And, the software company I work for now, Genesis Digital, we have 3 products: Kartra, Webinar Jam, Webinar, owned by a guy named Andy Jenkins, who was someone I met through the industry, became friends with, and have done business with and helped his business several times over the last 10 years. And so, after I had a baby, and was kind of getting tired of the endless amount of clients and consulting that I was doing, and trying to, make it through the night with no sleep and things like that. But it was kind of like, perfect timing. He called me up, said, "Hey, what you doing?" And I said what I was doing. Say, "How would you like to just, do that, but for us?" And so, they brought me in as a consultant, and then that turned into kind of the role I have now, which is essentially Chief Revenue Officer. So basically in charge of making of the money, sales, marketing, customer experience. And, it's wild to look back and think of how all the dots connect, but in a way they're all intertwined, and there's been lessons that have carried through, and hopefully we get into some of that today.
So a lot of the lessons you've learned along the way were more self-taught than anything. Just reading a lot of books, going to courses. Really wasn't a educational system that taught you everything.
No, one of the big ways I shortcutted a lot of the learning was joining different coaching programs and masterminds. I'm a big believer in that, being around people who are already successful and who you want to, essentially emulate in a way, but also, be able to see the mistakes they've made. And I always kind of, they have that 10,000 hour rule, but, I would rather go find the guy that has 100,000 hours and just piggyback, and skip all that. And that's what I kind of, me and Louie would always joke, Louis, people would say, well, Westside's different than when Louis first wrote about it. I said, well, you can go back to the beginning and end up in the same place that Louis is at now, or you can just take the point where we're at now and go forth,
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I did it. So, a lot of my success, honestly, has been putting myself in the right environments. And I think that's a big takeaway for a lot of people is, if you surround yourself by the right people who are doing the things you want to do and have kind of a proven path already, it's a lot easier than if you're kind of on your own trying to figure it all out all alone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, being a powerlifter obviously isn't a very easy thing at the level that you competed at. But can you talk about what lessons you learned in powerlifting that kind of translated into business? I mean, is most of it discipline?
I mean, that's a huge part, just showing up every day, right? It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter if you can't get out of bed this morning. It doesn't matter if
I've watched Westside versus the World, and it doesn't look easy at all. It's for sure.
Yeah. So, a lot of days that, I had a lot of issues with getting out of bed. I couldn't stand up straight, have to crawl to the bathroom, those kind of things. Didn't want to go to the gym, get in the car, drive to the gas station, grab an energy drink, a couple of taquitos or something like it, just to shove down your throat before you get there to train. And then you have to turn it on, but a lot of that, learn under the bar, that sometimes you don't feel like doing something, but then once you get going, all the cobwebs shake off and you have one of the best training sessions of your life. It's kind of like business, every day you got to show up, and there's a lot of stuff you don't want to do. And there's a lot of things that, especially like in your arena, like the financial side of stuff, so you get the books and keeping track of the numbers and those kind of things. Like a lot of people, they don't want to do that. It's not sexy, especially in the fitness space. They just want to train people, they don't want to worry about all that other stuff, but that's the stuff that makes the difference. And for me, the discipline to show up every day was a huge one. And then the other things is that you fail a lot, you miss a lot of weights. There's a lot of times you think you're better than you are. You go to a meet and kind of, reality hits. And that's the same in business. You try different things and some things succeed, some campaigns work and you get some money in the door, and sometimes they don't and you lose some money, but ultimately, as long as you keep putting one foot in front of the other, in powerlifting, your total continues to climb. Stay injury free, do the right things, go all in, and your total will climb. Same in business, if as long as you keep putting one foot in front of the other and stay committed to that goal, what that goal was, and do the things that are necessary. Yeah, sometimes you'll take a step back, sometimes money will be up, sometimes money will be down, and those kind of things. But if you can remain focused on the end goal, you keep moving forward, eventually you'll get there, and sometimes it takes people, they do it in record time. Sometimes it takes people a long time.
And
for
a
me,
lot of failures along the way.
exactly. For me, it was, 10 years to break those records. I wanted to quit so many different times. Other people come along and, seems like a couple of years they're breaking records. So, everybody's individual and on their own journey. And those are the kind of big lessons. And there's a million and one things that that transfer over. But I think that, to me, that's kind of, the environment was one, mentioned earlier, and then showing up every day is another. And then of course, just that being committed and the failures, expect failures, or you have to be willing to miss a weight in order to be able to get it someday,
Yeah, definitely. So transitioning into a world where you became a consultant and specifically in the fitness space, when an owner calls you up or you're kind of entering their business, what is there like a certain entry point that you focus on first, or you kind of just overlook the entire business and kind of decide on what area you want to focus on?
Yeah. So for me, it really comes down to, I call it three pillars, but marketing, sales, and customer experience, or stick rate, right? Like how many people are sticking around. Because ultimately, a lot of people think they need more traffic, but if they have a conversion problem, well, that's no good. And, you might be able to convert a lot of people, but if you don't get results, they're not going to stick around. Right. So
Correct.
and those are the first three things I look at. If they don't have systems in place for those, the rest of the business doesn't really matter, because if you don't have predictable revenue, you can't see those basic numbers. It doesn't really matter. And once we have those numbers, it's really easy to tweak the business. Want to double the business? Okay, we could raise your prices. We could double your prices. We could, sell to the same people more stuff. We could double the traffic. We can do incremental things across the board. What is it we can do here to grow the business? And then, that a lot of times, people, especially when they reach out to a consultant or coach or something like that, they have cash flow issues, right? So if you can solve the cash flow issue first, that then kind of releases some of the anxiety that they have and the desperation that they have and the stress, and that allows them to think a little clearer and allows them to get into, okay, let's talk about the rest of the business. And so that's really, for me, that's really what I'm looking at in the beginning is, are we healthy in terms of cash flow? If the answer is no, then let's fix that problem first. And then you get into the rest of the stuff as you go. But for me, that's what they got to look at. And like I said, you just say, out of those three areas, which do I have systems in? If the answer is none, then you need all three. But a lot of people have a sales system. They have a script they follow. They have an amazing, especially in the gym owner space, fitness space, CrossFit space, like a lot of people getting results for their clients, right? So that is taken care of, but they don't have any regular source of traffic. They rely on referrals, or they rely on walk-ins, and sometimes that works good, but sometimes it goes dry. And so if you don't have a way to consistently bring traffic into the business, we got to fix that. And once we have those things in place, now it's just a case of continually improving, optimizing, and those kind of things, and creating more of experience on the back end. Making it like I said, transacting, getting a larger amount of money out of people for different things. And, really that's what matters. And then the rest of the stuff, now you have the cash flow to afford people who know how to do the other stuff, so that you don't have to take it on yourself. And I kind of take the same approach I take, when I was powerlifting or, bodybuilding or any of the different things I've done, is you're always looking for your weaknesses, right? Because your weaknesses are the keys to unlocking the strength. And, if you have in your deadlift, if you have a glute issue and you fix the glute issue, all of a sudden your deadlift shoots up, right? Maybe 30%. It's not linear. Like, it's not like, oh, my glutes really weak, I get it 5 pounds stronger, add 5 pounds. No, that 5 pounds could unlock 30% of your strength. Same in business. We're looking for, where are you weak? What is the missing piece? Okay, let's attack that. And then the next thing shows up, and then you attack that. And then the next thing shows up and you attack that. The best thing about business versus training, though, is that training's all on you. You can't really outsource.
You can't hire somebody to do that for you.
You can't really outsource your bench press in competition, right? You have to get under the bar. But that's the great thing in business. And that's why business, you can move so much faster, is because you can just go find the expert in it that can help you, but you have to know what the weakness is to be able to do that. And that's what most people don't have, the awareness. And so they end up, thinking they need something, going and paying someone and getting kind of screwed over, because they had no idea what they were signing up for, what the expectations were, and those kind of things. And I hate to see that, but a lot of that is just kind of same in fitness. When someone buys a weight loss pill, they just don't know any better, right? They don't realize they're throwing
Exactly.
$60 down the drain. They have to do that in order to realize, okay, that's not the way, right? So it's a part of most people's journey, but I hate to see it, but that's the truth. But yeah, look for your weaknesses and then figure out how to turn those into strengths.
Now, taking a step back and talking about cash flow a little bit, is there a common theme you saw across, the businesses you came across on why they're having cash flow issues? Like, one thing I notice a lot with gym owners is they truly don't put a lot of value on their product and they don't charge enough. Is that something you notice also?
Yeah, I mean, most people aren't charging enough. And the funny thing is, I know when we had Barbell Business and Barbell Mastermind, we had a little spreadsheet calculator created where you put in your numbers, your overhead, your expenses, if you had staff, et cetera, and then it would spit out kind of what you would have to charge per person. And pretty much everybody who filled that out realized that they were like not even at break even, right? Like it was just like to hit the numbers they wanted to hit in terms of revenue goal, like, they would have to have, 1,005 members or something, and they were in, a 1,500 square foot facility. It's impossible, right? It's impossible. And so that's kind of, most people go in and they pick their prices based on the competition or what's around them, or, they never pick a price based on what they think, okay, I want to make this much money. This is what I'm going to charge, and so I always like to work backwards. And my wife just did this with her sister, actually, because her sister is an artist, and she creates some phenomenal artwork. And she was asking her, what do you charge? And she was saying, she's like, wait a minute, you're only charging $15 an hour for your time? She was like, oh, I guess when you work it out like that. And I was like, well, you're really not making $15 an hour, because that's how much it is to make the painting, but it doesn't calculate for the time that you're sitting at the art shows, right? Trying to sell the art.
Yeah.
So now you got to, now if you're there at you're at a farmer's market or something for 4 hours, well, now that $15 is split into, another 4 hours, making $1.50 or $2 an hour or something like that. So essentially what we were trying to do is, how much do you want to make a year? She said, I don't know. I said, well, how much do you make right now doing what you do as a dentist assistant, and she told us the number, and I said, okay, so if we work backwards, how much would you have to charge? And we figured out all she needed to do is be about $50 an hour, in terms of the way she had been calculating it, and she would make the same money, if she charged that. And so that was like an eye opener to show. Oh, and then the reality was, my wife and I went to a little sandcastle competition they had here. People flying all over the world to do that, but there was an artist there who had similar artwork to what she does, and his prices were like 3 times what she's charging, right? And so by being able to take pictures and show her kind of that, now she has like someone else is charging and people are paying it, presumably. And that's what a lot of people don't have, is they don't have the understanding that there is people out there who are paying more money, right? One of my clients I had from Australia, he lives in a town, there's about 6,000 people in the town, and he charged $1,000 a month. Right. Now you have to create the experience that matches that.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to think, okay, what would the experience be? What is someone who's going to pay that kind of money? Is it a luxury service? Is it only going to be for the affluent? What are they attracted to? Someone who buys a Porsche is very different than someone who buys a Camaro. Right. So you have to understand the psychological value, so to speak, of your target market if you want to do that. But to think that you can't charge those prices is based on your limitations, not based on reality, right?
Correct.
And there's gyms out there that charge phenomenal amounts. They're almost like a country club with yearly membership and astronomical fees. There's trainers out there who charge $150, $200 an hour. Charles Glass, for example. There's trainers who charge way more than that. Dr. Andy Gaplin, as a nutritionist, he works with a lot of actors and professionals, and I think last time we spoke, his nutrition coaching was $10,000. So the examples are out there. The thing that people get stuck in is that they've never seen it. And they've actually never done it themselves. Like they've never invested that kind of money. And people seem to have a very big problem asking for money if they would never pay it themselves, right?
Exactly.
And so the easiest way to get over that is, if you're a trainer, a business trainer, you should probably go pay somebody else to give you your training program. And you should go probably find the most expensive person to be able to do that, right? So that you can see what they give you. I worked with Shelby Starnes. When I did my bodybuilding show, I worked with Shelby Starnes, and I worked with, what's his name? The guy from Elite that trained at Westside for a while, big bodybuilder, John Meadows. But it was a lot of money to work with those guys. Shelby's communication to me was an email once a week. And his response was always like maybe a sentence.
Oh, wow.
I'd send him pictures. He'd send me a sentence back telling me what to do for the next week. That was it. And my communication with John was, here's what I'm trying to do. And then he sent me, Word document, 12 weeks of program to do. That was it. And that was some of the most expensive, coaching I've ever had. I did exactly what it said and got phenomenal results, stepped on stage over losing 100 pounds. They didn't have to do a lot, right? I paid for the knowledge. I paid for the shortcut. And that's sometimes what people miss is that, low end pricing often brings in, low end people that require a lot of attention. Case in point, my wife, like I said, she's a sports nutritionist. She was offering complete done for you meal planning, eat this time, this amount. And then she was also offering like macro meal planning where it's, here's your macros and you're on your own.
Yeah.
The macros was obviously cheaper because she didn't have to figure out this plan. Well, guess who the biggest problem was? The macro clients, because they had to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So here they are paying less and they're more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So you have to think about these things when you come out with your pricing. And oftentimes you charge whatever you want. And if you don't believe me, whatever your prices are, the next person you sell, add $5 to it, then add another $5 and then add another $5 and then add another $5. Sooner or later, you're going to see that people are either going to say yes or no. And it has nothing to do with price normally. Everything is to do with the desire and the need right now. And if you look at the hero's journey, which is a huge thing that I'm a fan of, everybody has this call to adventure, right? So anybody who walks in your gym has had this call to adventure of this new life. They're going to lose weight. They're going to transform, whatever it is, right? But before the crossing of the threshold, which is typically when you actually start the journey, a lot of people have what's known as refusal of the call, right? Where they back out. They're not quite ready yet. So oftentimes we think it's a personal thing. They said no to us. The reality is they just said no to their own adventure.
Yeah.
And people can look up the hero's journey and look at the different phases, but we're the mentors in that process. Once they decide to cross the threshold, then our job is to take them through the battlefield and the ups and the downs and all the things they're going to face and the falling off the diet and et cetera, et cetera. But, to get them to cross the threshold, that's where the sales conversation comes in. And you have to really get someone to a point where they're ready to commit, because they're not saying no to you. They're saying no to the commitment of transforming their life, because they're very comfortable where they are. If they weren't, they wouldn't have been there for years. Most people have been the way they are for a long, long time. They're a lot more comfortable with that than they are with, showing up to the gym, not being confident in how they look, following a meal plan they don't want to follow. And that's what, most gym owners, they're so emotionally attached to the sale. They take it so personal that they charge prices that they are comfortable saying, not what the client would pay. And one last example on that, I remember at the health club one time when I was first learning sales, the owner, I was shadowing the owner, and there was a couple there. They both worked at Walmart, and they signed up for a personal training package that was more than what they both made monthly, right? And you never know what someone has, whether they have inheritance, whether they have, money in the bank. You never know.
Yeah.
This couple signed up. And if I had, at the time, if I had done the sales thing, when they told me what they did, who they worked for, and I would never have thought they would sign up for that. And I probably would have blown the whole sale because of my expectation, my belief patterns, my thought process, right? And that shattered my reality, and I never looked at sales the same ever again.
Now, do you feel like owners, let's say just starting off in a fitness business, maybe cast the net too wide in order to get sales and make the most money as possible, as opposed to kind of zoning in on who their perfect client is?
Yeah, and a lot of time it's through desperation, right? So people want money and they'll take it from anybody. But the problem with that is that that's never going to build the business, because you're never going to build your reputation, right? You have to kind of think about, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be the kettlebell guy? That doesn't mean you only do kettlebells, but you're going to build a reputation around a certain topic or subject or something like that. And generalists don't tend to get known, right? If you look at probably any of the people, the listeners listening, if they look at anybody they follow on social media and stuff, it's not some generalist who's talking about 101 different things. It's someone who's very topic specific, or, you basically stays within certain parameters. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to expose you to a whole different world once you get into their system, but on the outside, they've chosen to be known about that. And I kind of think about, like, I always look at the medical professional, a general doctor, practitioner, he's going to refer you to a surgeon. If you have a hand problem, you're going to go to a hand surgeon. A foot problem, you go to a foot surgeon. You don't have one person that does all these different things. But who do you pay the most money to? You pay the most money to a specialist, right? Because they have the most knowledge, and you're trusting that knowledge is going to give you some advantage in some way. And so that's something that most people, they have to be willing to commit early in order to eventually get that recognition and attract those type of people. And that's what scares them. Lots of people, they want to work with men, but they'll take women, because, oh, this is who shows up. Well, if you're trying to create an environment just for one type of person, they're not going to come to you if there's all these other people, right? And that's what you have to understand, is that if you get a reputation for working with a certain type of people will travel from all over the world in order to work with you. People go to Westside to learn from Louie who want to get strong. They come from all over the world.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a lot of sense. So when you meet a lot of these trainers and owners, I got to imagine a lot of them are completely burnt out because they probably have too much on their plate and they're doing everything on their own. Is it more of like an inefficiency, or do you think they just have issues delegating or finding other individuals to kind of offload those responsibilities on?
Well, it goes back to a financial situation. The reality is they can't hire anybody else because of the way they run their business. And so in order to hire someone, they would essentially take a pay cut, right? Because the business and their income is basically one and the same. Right. And so, they need to learn that the business and their income is different. And even, I'm a big fan of like profit first and things like that, where you pay yourself first, but I would say 50% is probably all you should be taking from the business if you want to grow a business. Most businesses, and this shocks people when they hear this, most businesses, and you're from the corporate world, so you can kind of chime in here too, but 15, 20% is considered very, very healthy. To have that kind of profit margin.
Very healthy,
and the airline industry is at 3% profit margin. That's kind of like the highest of the airline industry. So when you look at companies like that, you have to understand, like, okay, what do I want to build? Now, that's not to say you couldn't be more profitable, right? There's ways to set stuff up, but if you plan to grow and expand, let's say you say, okay, I want to help as many people as possible. I'm currently in a 2,500 square foot facility. Well, at some point you're going to be maximum capacity. Well, you have two choices. You either move to a bigger place, which is always a tough thing to do because now you're getting people who, you might move away from what they're comfortable driving or, the place they love coming to, or it might get too big where they don't feel included, or you can open up a second location, a third location. You could do a dozen locations. You already have proven the business model, but you can't do that if you're doing everything yourself, So most people, when it comes to burnout, the reality is that, they're working around the clock and you just can't do that, like nobody can. And we live in a society where people think they can just grind and grind and grind. In countries like China, people are dropping dead because they're working so much, like literally just dropping dead from exhaustion. We're in a business that, you should understand the importance of sleep and rest and recovery and stress management and all these different things. And so, you've got about 18 months of burning the candle at both ends before it just becomes too much, right? And you have kind of a breakdown. But you have to look at that. And again, I like to think of it like, where are you the bottleneck, right? And what are you going to outsource? And the thing is that unfortunately, people will push a trainer to stop training, right? You have to become the business owner. And, but the training is the piece they love. The reality is you got to know you've got to understand who you are. And there's different tests that people can take. I'm a big fan of like wealth dynamics, talent dynamics, those kind of tests by Roger Hamilton. There's things like Strength Finder as well that people can take. But you have to understand what your strengths are in terms of who are you, what's your personality. Are you a technician? Are you a star? Are you, there's these different roles that you're going to play. Once you know that, then you build your team around that, right? And you fill the gaps of what's missing. What most people do is they go partner up with someone who's just like them because they love hanging out with their buddies, and it just never seems to work, right? And that's why most partnerships suck, because you're both creative and nobody's an action taker.
Exactly.
You just come up with big ideas, but nobody actually sees those ideas through. And I know, because I'm an ideas guy, I'm a strategy guy. Without the team, I would get a lot less done, right?
Exactly.
And so, but once you know that, you can stay in your lane and you can say, okay, this is outside what I should be doing. Now, in the beginning, you might have to do things you don't want to do, but you put them on your checklist of things that those are the first things to go, right? And these are all things that, as you grow as a business owner, you're going to understand anyway. But if you're paying, like I said, if your business account and your personal account are one and the same, well, you get into trouble. You get into trouble and it causes problems. So you've got to learn at the very essence, what a business should look like from that standpoint, so that when it's time to hire someone or invest in something, you don't feel like it's coming out of your pocket. And that's what I think the big problem is with most people, is essentially it's coming out of their family's pocket. It's coming out of their pocket. And so hiring someone is a big risk, because if they don't make the money up, they're going to be in trouble. And it's kind of catch-22, right? If they don't do that, they're not going to be able to grow. And if they do that, they're going to have to take a step back, and they might not grow, right? So that fear that it might not work out. So they're at this real tough point. And it gets really, really hard for people. And so hopefully they can, if they're listening to this and they're just getting started, they can kind of avoid some of this. And if you find yourself, you're in that situation now, my opinion is figure out what's the least amount of money you need to live, cut back on all your expenses that you can, so that you have the cash flow, so that you can invest in the team to be around you, whether it's virtual, whether it's trainers at the gym or support at the gym, so that you can actually think more and buy back your time, buy back your freedom. So then you can then move forward, because sometimes you do have to take 2 steps back to be able to, accelerate forward.
Yeah. And exceptionally like the point you made there at the end about buying back your time. I think that to add on to everything you said is most people would just think of it as simply an expense hiring out. But if you're spending 3-4 hours a night working on sales or marketing, or working on your finances and kind of get your books together, if that's a job that someone can do for a certain price a lot quicker than you can, you've just freed up 3 to 4 more hours of your time to really focus and go 1,000% in on what you want to go in and what your strengths are.
And the thing is a lot of times you don't actually have to hire someone full time, right? That's the beauty about the world we live in now, is there's so many freelance, and like to do your books, you might be spending 3 to 4 hours a night, but the reality is that someone else could do it much quicker, and it costs you maybe $150 a month to have them as a bookkeeper, right? And so a lot of people don't understand this because they never look into it, but it's not like you have to hire someone full time to work for you. You can pay services, and it's fractional investments, in what I call it. You're only buying their time when they work on your business, and then they are able to work on other people's businesses to make up the difference. That gives you a lot of freedom as well, because now you can start looking at those things. And from people cleaning the gym, like if you're spending an hour cleaning the gym in the morning and an hour cleaning the gym at night, well, those are 2 hours that you could buy back probably for like $20, and again, it depends on where you live. Here in California, it's going to cost you $30, right? $15 an hour to have someone come in, but is $30 worth 2 hours of your time? And that's where it comes down to, like, what's your hour worth? I'm not a big trade dollars, hours for dollars, but the reality is if you let's say you do a sales call, and that hour you sell a package, someone commits to the gym for 12 months, and it's multiple $1,000s. Well, that hour is worth a few $1,000s to you, right? So how can you do more of that versus the other stuff? And that's where you have to look at, okay, what am I doing that's like minimum wage that could be outsourced? What am I doing that's I'm not my strongest strength, and it's taking me way longer than it should? And those are the kind of things that essentially a time sucks, and they're the easiest things to try to eliminate first. And with sites like Fiverr and Upwork and these different things, you can hire people all over the country. So you don't even, you don't have to hire, like here, I wouldn't have to hire someone from California. I just hired someone from Florida for like $8 an hour to take a bunch of information and put it on a spreadsheet for me. And they're super happy, and I'm super happy. And hired him for, I think it was like 12 hours it took him to do it total. And they're not a full-time employee. I don't have to keep paying them. They got the job done, and now we move on.
Nice. So what are your thoughts on when you are looking at a trainer who might be thinking of starting their own business, on saving up and using their own money versus getting an investor or getting outside capital?
Well, most of the time, unfortunately, there's nothing wrong with other people's money, but unfortunately, they don't understand what they're getting into, and they give away ownership, right? You're much better taking on debt than giving away ownership, because when you think about it, and again, if business is done correctly, every time you take, money from the business, technically your owner should get money. The other partner should get money from the business, right? If you're 50-50 partners, the money has to be split down the middle. Well, if they just invested in you in the front end, and they're not doing anything on the back end, 5 years down the road, they're still getting 50%. It's a pretty good ROI for them, right? So for me, like, equity partners are a dangerous thing because what are they bringing to the table? Now, if your equity partner is also your mentor and your coach and is going to, guide you and help you grow, there's something to that. But people should look into kind of what that's worth, right? And a lot of times it's only worth maybe 5-10%. But people, because the other person is putting up 50% of the money, they think they get 50% of the ownership. So people have to understand the difference there. And I think that can get people in a lot of trouble. I've seen a lot of times, especially with like a lot of CrossFit gyms that we work with, a lot of people had 3 or 4 owners, but only one person was working in the business, but all 4 of them were taking money from the business.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very clear. Like you can give 50% ownership, but they might not get money unless the company sells, for example. Like there's different ways to do it. And that's why, bootstrapping is often the best way to do it, because you don't have these other people with expectations or who want their money back and things like that. Or, like I said, other people's money, but as in form of a debt, so you're going to take that money and then you're going to pay them back with whatever percent interest. And hopefully they'll give it to you a lot cheaper than like the bank will, right? But that's where people get in trouble a lot of times, because money comes in and has to be split or given to people that aren't contributing anything to the business after that initial investment. It's great from an investor standpoint. It's terrible from an owner standpoint.
Definitely. So kind of switching gears a bit and talking about the fitness industry as a whole and kind of where it's going. And I'll start with CrossFit here, because you were, coaching in CrossFit for a number of years with CrossFit weightlifting, consulted a lot of businesses and boxes. And that's kind of where I started my fitness, kind of where I gravitated towards being a coach and helping owners. And CrossFit was booming for a number of years, and boxes were opening up on every single corner, and people were flocking to join this so-called cult everybody was creating. But CrossFit's really made a big paradigm shift going away from this. And now it seems like these box owners are really going to struggle going forward, because CrossFit isn't what it used to be. And it's not following the same mentality in terms of competition. They've kind of shifted gears towards an older demographic. So what do you think a struggling owner of a box should do to navigate times like this? Should they go lean? Do they need to spend more money to market, try to get more people in the door?
Yeah, so I think the first thing people have to realize is that no matter whether you're independent or whether you're with some kind of franchise or license program, the reality is the brand or the company is not the saving grace, right? And if you want to be successful, you have to be the gym owner, have to be promoting and positioning yourself in the marketplace locally, in order to be an attraction. And that means that you're going to have to invest. And the thing with CrossFit, and you mentioned before we started recording, is it was very, very easy in the beginning because it was new. There's a buzz, and that creates the attraction. It was a new sport that took off. It creates an attraction. And as it kind of settles into what the vision is of the leader, you start to see some of that falling away. And so the buzz is not quite there anymore. Better ways, so to speak, people targeting CrossFit and people who have done CrossFit and it didn't work for them, or it wasn't their cup of tea. Like now you have a lot of that, right? And so what you have to realize is, as a gym yourself, you have to figure out what your core is. Like, what you don't have to go with where the brand goes, just unless they lay down the law on what you can and can't teach, and they provide trainer coaching in terms of this is exactly how the class goes and here's your schedule for the week, and here they don't do that. I don't know any franchise that does that, honestly. Where everything is dictated. Most of it is here's the brand name, here's our concepts and theories, and you're really in charge of creating your own program. With that comes you're really in charge of your own marketing, running advertising, understanding that the easiest way to get a new client is to buy the client, right? How much does it cost you to get them to walk in the gym, and try you out and convert? And what's the process you're going to use for that? Well, what's going to attract them in? If you want to attract people who are, long-term longevity people, it's going to be an older audience, right? Because they're in a different place on their journey. And that's something that most people never think about with their marketing, is where someone is on their journey, like consciously, where they are on their journey. If they someone who's, buying diet pills, well, the first thing they're probably going to do is go join a big box gym, right? They're probably not going to walk in your door for
They're
one-to-one.
looking for the easy way out.
Yeah, for group training or high-end one-to-one training. Once they join the big box gym, they're probably going to hire the big box gym trainer, right? Because they don't know how to use all the machines in there. Once they've hired that trainer and it sucks, someone's probably going to tell them they need to go join some studio or some group program or a boot camp. Once they do that for a year or so, they're going to realize that the classes aren't custom. They're very generic. They're going to might want to move into like more custom programming, moving up the chain. And so really you've got to decide who you want to work with, who's your ideal client. And then you build your business around that unapologetically. And you can do that, under a brand of someone else, or you can, separate and do it as yourself. And there's positive and negatives to both. But the reality is that you're responsible for your future. And I think when you put it in the hands of a bigger organization and expect them to fill your gym or them to create the buzz, it's risky because they can shift, they can make moves, you can do what they're currently doing, pulling back on this competitive edge, which may have been the marketing edge. And only time will tell. I could be completely wrong. It could be the best thing that ever happened and gyms could flourish because of it. But I still believe that, from people I've met, the best gym owners in terms of business wise, are investing on bringing new people in, on marketing, on customer experience, having systems in place, follow-up systems, investing in marketing campaigns and email automation and building this experience that goes beyond just the gym, right? And that's really what is going to make the difference. And so that's what people need to be looking at. And is, someone walks in your gym, they're there for an hour, maybe two, if they're hanging out before and after. And what's that experience? Do you have kind of the Starbucks experience where you have the couches and the hangout areas in order to make them stick around longer? Do you have the events that go on outside of your regular classes to bring the community together, and bond? Do you do stuff for charity together to give back and give forward to the community as a whole? Do you have individual groups that may be into specific topics like hiking groups or biking groups or, different things that you've created? And those are the things that make the difference. And the community is always going to be the power of, especially in a gym business, the community is always going to be what holds the gym together, regardless of the programming or anything like that. And results matter, but in today's day and age, a lot of people aren't coming to get shredded to the bone. They're coming because of the experience, the feelings that the gym gives them. And when you start to understand that only a small percentage are there to actually get shredded or whatever you want to call it, you start to see what people value and you can provide to that. And I think that's what's very, very important for people, is to go beyond just that 1 hour training system and what they do and what they provide. I mentioned sleep earlier and nutrition, and there's a lot of different things you can do to improve the quality lives of your members. And, most importantly, what's important for people to remember is they might think of themselves as a fitness coach or a gym owner or something like that. But the reality is you're the entry point into a life-changing transformation for someone. They join the gym or the program because they believe fitness is the access point for them to unlock this potential or this change that they know that they're destined for, right? They know that their life could be better, and they see the path to that through fitness, right? Some people see it through spirituality. Some people see it through money, making money. Some people see it through relationships, finding the right partner. Our clients in the fitness space that show up, they see it through the body, the physical transformation. If I physically transform, everything else will transform. I'll live longer, I'll be happier, et cetera, et cetera. When you understand that, you also understand that you're a life coach. You're in the business of improving their life. And so that spans out, that spills out into all areas. And you might choose not to embrace that. You might choose to ignore that and let them find their own path, but they're going to go off and they're going to go find someone else, right? If you can't take them, if you can only take them from point A to point B and they want to go from point A to point Z, then they're going to go off. There's nothing wrong with that if you know where your end point is, if you know the limits. But most gym owners don't, right? And they don't even know the journey that the customer is trying to take. So these are all things that make a difference. And I think nothing beats caring about your clients and creating things in place that allow them to go deeper on their journey. The great thing is you can automate most of it, right? You can create a video series that they get delivered over the course of 100 days where you make it once and it's done, and now everybody that goes through it watches those videos. They're going to bond, they're going to connect, they're going to feel like some connection with you that's going to make it harder for them to leave, you didn't have to do anything. You already created it, right? So those are the kind of things I think make the difference, and will allow people to achieve as they move forward. If they just rely on, the training side of it and word of mouth, it's so difficult because competition is always growing. And the thing is it's human nature. We like new things. We believe there's a secret that we don't know yet. And when the new thing comes along, that must be it. So if you have a bunch of people who have tried CrossFit and it didn't work, and then, F45 comes out, well, guess who's joining F45? The same people that were joining your gym when CrossFit started. So you can't rely on that buzz because, once it's launched, once it's out there, you become, old news. So you have to constantly, that's why you constantly see, like if you watch commercials, which I watch very little, but to study, like toothpaste, for example, they keep adding new stuff to toothpaste. Like, makes your teeth whiter, brush with charcoal, the flakes inside.
They keep getting.
Like, let's be honest here. It's the same product that was, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Same with, the shampoo you use or whatever. But they always have to create a new spin and always make it new because, those products are difficult to sell. And, they're doing that. So imagine, you've been around now for 5 years. Well, fantastic. You're old news. You're the gym that everybody's already tried. How do you get those people to come back that tried it, that might not have got the true experience or might not have really gone through that? How do you get those people back, or how do you get the people that are there to stay there because they're bored now because they've been doing the same thing for 5 years? They're looking for a change, and recently they haven't felt included in the community, or they their friend left, so maybe they're going to leave. These are all questions you have to think through, and it's a lot. It's a lot for a business owner, and that's why not everybody's cut out to be one. But you get to think about this stuff when you start to get your time back and you start to give yourself space to think. Most people don't do that. Most people don't give themselves time with a blank piece of paper and a pen to just think through what they want and how they're going to get it.
So for an owner who's listening to this and saying to themselves, yeah, I only focus on the training side, maybe I should focus more on the sales and marketing, maybe I should focus more on kind of setting up the business structure, what resources can you recommend that they use to kind of give them that step to get going?
I mean, I'm an avid learner. Yeah, I think the thing is that you got to understand like what needs to happen in these processes, and so it's hard to recommend just one thing, right? But basically, you're going to want to understand. Like Dan Kennedy has a book, The Ultimate Marketing Plan. It's a really good book in terms of understanding what's needed. In order to be able to position your business and those kind of things. So you're going to need something like that. You're going to want, some form of sales book. And there's so many out there that it's hard to recommend one. I used to teach a system called Prescription Selling System. It's not available. So, but it's like compromised of so many different courses. But I think The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes is a really good book as well. For people to get. And then customer experience book. My friend Joey Coleman has a book, I think it's the first 100 days or something like that. That's a very good book on the customer experience side of stuff that goes beyond the service provided, right? It's everything outside of that that's going to improve you. So once you have a real basic understanding, like it's really about taking action on those things. You're always going to be able to add more tools to the library, for instance, on that stuff. But, the concepts and theories are what's important, and then you can get granular and learn if Facebook ads or something like that. But you need to understand the basics of marketing. And really, there's only two things that people need to learn. Ultimately, they're either going to be talking or typing, speaking, right? And those are the two skill sets: copywriting, persuasion, how to present and perform, those kind of things. These are all skill sets that you would learn as a business owner. And so I like to think people should, try to think of an area that they're the weakest in, invest there first, and then, get a system down and then move to the next thing. Too many people will learn something and not implement it, right? Read the Ultimate Marketing Plan and then create your marketing plan. Read the Ultimate Sales Machine, create your sales system. Read, Joey's 100-day customer experience book, and then implement, as much of that as you can. Yeah. And then go learn something else and add to what you already have. And I think that's really, the best advice I can give to most people out there. Because what tends to happen is you follow the threads, right? And as I'm saying this, I'm going, man, I should really have all my own resources. And, I'm like realizing like, oh crap, I should really spend some time and get the book wrote and stuff like that. So I'm like laughing as I'm thinking through this. But ultimately, the point is I've always followed the threads, right? You read one book and it leads you to another book. You listen to one podcast and it leads you to another podcast, or one course leads you to something else. And that's really what's going to happen. And it's compounding, right? You're stacking on top of each other as you learn. So hopefully, those 3 books would be a good starting place for a lot of people.
Got it. So kind of tying back a little bit to the finance and business side, for an owner or a trainer, by what financial metric do you think that they should really baseline themselves off of? Is it revenue, profit? Do you think there's a certain ratio they should follow?
Well, I mean, I think they should pick what they're comfortable with, right? Again, it could be 50%, it could be 20%. You just got to have a very specific number. I don't know if you recommend any books, but I mentioned Profit First earlier. I think that's a good place for a lot of kind of trainers probably to start on how they should pay themselves, from what goes in their bank account, what goes into savings, what goes towards operations, et cetera, et cetera. And that's typically where I tell people to start. And I think, what's important is like revenue is important, but it's what you keep that's really important, right? So, you don't want to be, and different businesses are going to be different, right? But in the coaching consulting space, in the trainer space, typically it's more about what you keep, right? You're not really a growth business where you're going to try to invest 100% back in and expand to 1,000 gyms as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
If that's your goal, probably going to take a whole different approach. For most gym owners who are looking just to, have their facility, maybe eventually expand. Ultimately, it's what you keep. This is what's important, right? Because that's going to change your life. And again, I think it's important to set kind of a baseline too. I moved into the more of the minimalistic lifestyle, and we're constantly getting rid of stuff. I won't get rid of my books. That's about the only thing. But we're in this group called Buy Nothing Group, and we're constantly giving away stuff, and realizing that you hold on to stuff way too long. But as we've moved into this process of essentially getting rid of our possessions and things like that, you start to look at like what you desire and do you really need it and is it important? And there's different thought processes on it. But I'm kind of the millionaire next door kind of mentality. And there was just a article that was released, I think it was by Forbes recently, that shared, basically 50% of millionaires have actually, a very normal people, and they've become millionaires through savings, right?
Yeah.
Not through hitting home runs with business or something like that. And so I think that's very important for people to start to understand, like what do they need to live the life they want to live, and doing that. And I've become more and more of a fan of the less is more mentality, valuing your time over money, right? If, for example, your goal is to be able to pick your kid up from school every day, to eat dinner with your kid, to hang out until they go to bed and read them a bedtime story. Let's say you're going to finish work at 4:00. Well, you might have to sacrifice the income that you would make if you worked past that hour, right? But if it's not really sacrifice if you value time,
Yeah.
right? And so it comes down to what do you value and what do you want? I think that's important. And, I mentioned earlier about working backwards for how much money do you need to make in order to live the life you need to make. One of the big things that I've realized over time, being fortunate to hang out with millionaires and even billionaires, Richard Branson, John Paul Giorgio, and likes like that, you start to see different people at different levels, and you start to wonder, okay, do I really want to live my life like this, right?
Yeah.
Do I want to be working around the clock? Do I want to have to be on my phone 24/7? Some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that, but most people don't. So you have to figure out what you want, and then you have to stop kind of following the people that encourage this behavior that don't necessarily agree with, right? The comparison is what kills you. And so, if your goal is to make, let's say $10,000 a month, figure out what you have to do that. You can either do it by expanding your team, charging more money, working with more people. Like, you just figure out what it's going to take. Then you get to that number, and then you can reassess, and you'll probably change your goal. But, far too many people are trying to get to a certain number, and it's going about it the hard way. And so that's kind of, for me, I'm always looking in those type of things. It's what you keep that matters. But also, you can get to a certain number, and then you can, let's say your goal is to get to 10,000 a month in take home. So you're 20,000 a month in revenue with keeping 50%. You get to that number, but you're working yourself to the bone. Well, then you figure out, how do I keep this number here? You don't have to grow it. How do I keep this number here? But how do I shave hours off my day?
And free up some time.
Exactly. So it's not always about the revenue growth. And sometimes it's about the way you make the money.
Got it. So to close this up here, I got 2 more questions for you, rapid fire. So if you were struggling, let's say in your current role with a business issue, and you had one get out of business jail free card, who would you call? Doesn't have to be someone you know. Could be someone that in terms of business you idolize and who you think offers a lot of knowledge in the business space.
I'd call someone like Richard Branson would be my go-to. Having met him, spent some time with him on Necker Island, he's probably one of the most, I think he's one of the most legit people that, like, he is the way he is. Like, you see him when he's promoting stuff, he's fun, he gets it, and he has a very good thought process on what we consider problems, right? He thinks through things very differently, and I always love hearing what he has to say, and I think he would know the right thing to say, if you were in a critical situation.
Got it. And let's say John from Virginia gets asked the same question. He says, you know what, I've been to a few business seminars, I've seen AJ talk, and he says, I'm going to pick AJ Roberts. And he's an owner of a gym, struggling, can't convert people. What one piece of advice of everything we've talked about would you give him if you could only give him one?
I think it's get clear on what you actually want. Once you know that, then you can start creating the boundaries around that. Most people are not clear enough on what it is they're trying to do, who they're trying to be, which is really it's a self-discovery phase on who you actually are, right? Who you want to be is just really figuring out who you are. If you want to be the kettlebell guy, well, then be the kettlebell guy and don't be anything else, but that's, to me, that the one piece is getting super crystal clear on what it is you want. Because once you know what you want, you can become committed to it. And now you can just put the blinders on and ignore everybody else. When I was training to be the best powerlifter in the world, I didn't care about Olympic lifting or strongman training. And, that might be great, but I'm never going to do that stuff because it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to go. And I think that was having that clarity and having the commitment to the outcome, allowed me to stay super focused. I think in business, most people don't know what they truly want. And so they're able to get distracted by different opportunities and different things that come up and different ideas that people have because they don't know where they're going. And it's really hard. It's a lot easier going from New York to California with a GPS than it is to just go from New York to California guessing the whole way.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap. AJ, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Now, if anybody wanted to keep in touch with you, where's the best place to see what you're doing and what you're working on?
Yeah, so if you just want to follow me, you can go to facebook.com/AJ Roberts. And if you're interested in learning about revenue and growth strategies, then you can just go to my website, ajroberts.com, and get on the newsletter there.
Perfect. AJ, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning into the show. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with AJ Roberts. Again, if you want to find out some more information about AJ, you can find him on Instagram at AJ Roberts or visit his website at www.ajroberts.com. Now, I know I briefly mentioned Kartra in the intro, and I want to dive a bit more into how amazing this platform is. I've personally used this platform to help someone in the fitness industry create an online kettlebell program. They will give you just about everything you need to successfully create your content and market it effectively. Some of the features they have are full-featured product carts, a complete affiliate management system, powerfully automated email marketing, a full help desk with live chat, their own video hosting, and some beautifully high-converting marketing pages and landing pages to create some successful funnels. If you head over to www.fitbiztalk.com and click the resources tab, there'll be a link there to give you a free 14-day trial. I highly recommend you try this out for yourself, see if it's a great content maker for you, and really help you create some online revenue. Next week, we have Scott Howell on the show with Red Dot Fitness. I visited this gym personally, and it's probably one of the most thought out and most badass gyms I've ever visited. This guy has an amazing community of people out in the Bay Area, and he has years of experience not only in his own gym, but also working as an executive in a big box gym. If you really love this podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the podcast. I'm Sebastiano Mangiafico, and we'll see you next week.